April 19th, 1989. Valonia, Arkansas. The sun is dropping behind the cotton fields, painting the sky the color of a fresh bruise, purple and orange bleeding together. Carl Brian Hooten leans across the kitchen table and kisses his wife like he's still 17 years old and she's still the prettiest girl at the homecoming dance. "I'm going to Randy's to shoot some pool and drink a couple beers," he says, grabbing his keys off the counter. "Be home by 11. Lisa watches his taillights disappear down Highway 31, red dots fading into the dusk. That was the last time she ever saw him alive. Next morning, two deer hunters looking for a shortcut stumble over something in the weeds off County Road 285. A body, face down. One gunshot behind the left ear. Wallet gone. Keys tossed in the dirt like the killer wanted it to look random. But this wasn't random. The killer wasn't a stranger from the highway. He was blood. It would take 34 years and a drop of DNA invisible to the naked eye to prove that the man who murdered Carl Brian Hooten was the half-brother Carl never even knew existed. Before we go any further, hit that subscribe button if you believe family should protect each other, not destroy them. Only someone as cold-blooded as this killer would scroll past without subscribing. The evening of April 19th had been perfect in the way ordinary evenings are perfect. You don't know they're perfect until they're gone. Carl had come home from his repair shop at 6 o'clock sharp, just like he did every weeknight. 30 years old, grease still under his fingernails no matter how hard he scrubbed with the lava soap. His hands were rough, calloused, the hands of a man who worked with them. But they were gentle when they ruffled his son's hair. Tyler, 7 years old, ran to the door when he heard his daddy's pickup pull into the gravel driveway. Brandon, only 4, toddled behind his big brother, both boys competing for their father's attention. "Daddy, Daddy, I got an A on my spelling test." Tyler waved the paper like a flag. Carl scooped him up with one arm, Brandon with the other. "That's my boy. Knew you would." Inside, the house smelled like fried catfish and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle drifting through the screen door. Lisa stood at the stove, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing the blue cotton dress Carl had bought her for her birthday. She was 29, still slim, still beautiful, still the girl he'd fallen for in the popcorn line at the high school homecoming game in 1977. They'd been married 10 years. Together for 12. Dinner was simple, fried catfish that Carl had caught himself at Cersei Lake the weekend before, mashed potatoes with too much butter the way he liked them, green beans from a can, and sweet tea so sweet it could rot your teeth. The boys chattered about their day, Tyler's spelling bee coming up, Brandon's new loose tooth that wiggled when he pushed it with his tongue. Carl sat at the head of the table in his usual spot, still wearing his work shirt with Hooten Auto Repair stitched over the pocket. It was his own shop, just a small garage off Highway 31, but it was his. He'd built it himself 3 years ago with a bank loan and pure determination. After supper, when Lisa cleared the plates while Carl pushed away from the table and stretched. Merle Haggard was playing on the tape deck in the living room. Mama tried, and Carl hummed along as he dried the dishes Lisa washed. "You going out tonight?" Lisa asked, handing him a dripping plate. "Thought I'd head to Randy's for a bit, shoot some pool. Randy said Tommy Joe's been talking trash, thinks he can beat me." Carl grinned. "Can't let that stand." Lisa smiled. "You and your pride." "Ain't pride, darling, it's principle." They moved to the front porch after the dishes were done, sat together on the porch swing that squeaked with every movement. The cicadas were singing their evening song loud and insistent. The heat of the day still hung in the air even though the sun was nearly gone. Carl lit a cigarette. Lisa hated it. But she'd stopped nagging him about it years ago and they rocked in silence for a few minutes. "I'm blessed, darling," Carl said suddenly, smoke curling from his mouth. "Real blessed." Lisa looked at him. "What brought that on?" I don't know. Just sitting here thinking. Got a good woman, 2 healthy boys, my own business, roof over our heads. Not every man can say that. Lisa leaned her head on his shoulder. We are blessed. Carl stubbed out his cigarette in the ashtray on the porch railing, then kissed the top of her head. I better get going if I'm gonna make it to Randy's before all the good tables are taken. He went inside, kissed both boys goodnight. They were already in their pajamas, getting ready for bed. Tyler was reading a comic book. Brandon was playing with his toy trucks on the living room floor. You be good for your mama, Carl told them. I'll see you in the morning. Bye, Daddy, they chorused. Carl grabbed his keys off the hook by the door, his wallet from the kitchen counter, and headed out. Lisa walked him to his truck, a 1984 Chevy Silverado, dark blue, with a dent in the passenger door from where he'd backed into a fence post 2 years ago. He climbed in, turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. Lisa stood in the driveway, arms crossed against the evening chill that was just starting to creep in. Carl leaned out the window. Be home by 11. You better be, Lisa said, smiling. She watched his taillights disappear down Highway 31, headed south toward Randy's pool hall in Beebe. The red glow faded into the darkness, swallowed by the night. That was 7:45 p.m. Carl Brian Hooton would never come home. April 20th, 1989. Dawn breaking cold and gray. Bobby Fitch and Dale Monroe had been hunting buddies for 15 years. They knew every deer trail, every clearing, every shortcut through White County. That morning they were looking for a new path from Highway 31 to the back 40 of the Morrison property where Dale had permission to hunt. Cut through here, Bobby said, pointing to a gap in the tree line off County Road 285. Comes out right where we need to be. They pushed through the weeds, boots crunching on dead leaves and broken branches. It was barely 6 in the morning, sun just starting to paint the sky pink. That's when Dale stopped. Bobby! Something in his voice made Bobby turn around fast. That ain't no deer, Dale said. 20 feet ahead, partially hidden in the tall grass and wild blackberry bushes, lay a man. Face down, arms at his sides, completely still. Bobby's first thought was, drunk. Some fool wandered off the road, passed out in the weeds. But as they got closer, that hope died quickly. The back of the man's head was wrong, dark with blood, dried and stiff. A single entry wound behind the left ear, small and neat. Professional. Jesus Christ, Bobby whispered. Don't touch nothing, we gotta call the sheriff. Dale was already backing away, hand over his mouth. White County Sheriff's Department arrived within 20 minutes. By 7 a.m., County Road 285 was blocked off with yellow tape and patrol cars. By 8 a.m., Arkansas State Police had been called in. The body belonged to Carl Brian Hooton, 30 years old, married, father of 2, mechanic. Lead Detective Ray Holbrook, 28 years on the force, stood over the body and felt something cold settle in his stomach. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't a bar fight gone wrong. This was execution. Carl lay face down in the dirt and weeds, wearing the same work shirt he'd had on at dinner. Blue jeans, work boots. His wallet was gone, but change from his pockets was scattered in the grass around him. Quarters, dimes, nickels. His keys had been tossed a few feet away, half buried in the dirt. One shot. .38 caliber based on the preliminary examination, fired at point-blank range, execution style, behind the left ear. The bullet had exited through Carl's right temple, lodged somewhere in the dirt beneath him. There was no blood trail leading to the body, no scuff marks in the dirt suggesting he'd been dragged, no defensive wounds on his hands. Carl had been killed right where he lay, or very close to it. He never saw it coming, Holbrook said to his partner, Detective Mike Crawford. Look at him. He's relaxed. No fighting, just done. Robbery? Crawford suggested. Holbrook shook his head. Wallet's gone, but why leave the change? And look, he pointed to Carl's left hand. Wedding ring's still on gold, worth at least $100. Any real thief would have taken that. So it's staged. Staged or interrupted. Somebody wanted it to look like robbery. They processed the scene for hours. Photographs from every angle. Evidence bags for every piece of debris. Boot prints in the soft dirt. Common Justin work boots, size 10. Sold at every Walmart from Little Rock to Memphis. Blue denim fibers on Carl's clothing, but half the men in Arkansas wore Levi's jeans in 1989. The medical examiner arrived at 10:30 a.m. Estimated time of death between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. Carl had left Randy's pool hall at 10:30 p.m. The drive home should have taken 15 minutes. He never made it. By noon, word had spread through Valonia like wildfire. Lisa Hooten had called the sheriff's office at 7:15 that morning when Carl's truck wasn't in the driveway and his side of the bed was still made. The dispatcher had told her to sit tight, they'd check around. 2 deputies showed up at her door at 9:00 a.m. She knew before they said a word. Mrs. Hooten, the older deputy said, taking off his hat, I'm real sorry. We found Carl this morning off County Road 285. He's gone. Lisa's knees buckled. The deputies caught her before she hit the floor. Tyler and Brandon watched from the hallway, not understanding yet, but knowing something terrible had happened. Carl's pickup was found 2 days later, 10 miles away near B Branch, down a dirt logging road nobody used anymore. Torched, burned to the frame. Nothing left but twisted metal and melted rubber. Whoever killed Carl Brian Hooten had tried to destroy the evidence. But they'd left something behind. Something they didn't even know about. Inside the evidence bags at the White County Sheriff's Department, sealed and stored, were Carl's jeans. Blood-stained, dirty. And on the inside of the left thigh, invisible to the naked eye in 1989, was a microscopic smear of semen. Not Carl's, the killer's. It would sit in that evidence bag for 34 years before anyone thought to test it. White County exploded with fear. Valonia was a town of 2,400 people. Everyone knew everyone. Doors didn't have locks, or if they did, nobody used them. Kids rode bikes until dark. Women walked alone to the grocery store. Not anymore. Within a week, every hardware store within 20 miles sold out of deadbolts. Parents drove their children to school instead of letting them walk. Women traveled in pairs. Sheriff's deputies worked 18-hour shifts. The Arkansas State Police set up a command center in the high school gymnasium. Tips poured in by the dozens. Carl owed money to a bookie in Little Rock. Carl was running moonshine on the side. Carl was having an affair with someone's wife. Every rumor had to be investigated, every lead had to be followed, and every single one led nowhere. Detective Holbrook interviewed 47 people in the first week alone. Randy, the pool hall owner. The 4 men who'd been shooting pool with Carl that night. Tommy Joe, who'd lost 2 games and $20 to Carl and left at 9:00 p.m. Every regular at Randy's. Every person who drove Highway 31 between 10:30 p.m. and midnight. Nobody saw anything. Nobody heard anything. Carl Brian Hooten had disappeared into the darkness between Randy's pool hall and his house on County Road 58, and somewhere in those 11 miles someone had flagged him down, convinced him to pull over, and shot him in the back of the head. Someone he trusted, because Carl had no defensive wounds. No signs of struggle. He'd turned his back on his killer. Holbrook stood in his office late one night, 3 weeks into the investigation, staring at the evidence board. Photos of Carl, maps of the area, timeline, list of suspects, all of them eliminated. Who were you helping, Carl? Holbrook whispered to the photos. Who did you trust enough to get out of your truck for? The photos didn't answer. And the case went cold. Want to see justice served? Hit that like button if you believe every killer, no matter how careful, eventually gets caught. Only the guilty would keep scrolling. Carl Brian Hooten wasn't supposed to die at 30, he was supposed to grow old. Watch his boys graduate high school, walk them down the aisle at their weddings, teach his grandchildren how to bait a hook and change a tire. He was supposed to have decades ahead of him, not just 30 years. But to understand why Carl's death devastated an entire community, you have to understand who Carl was. Not just what happened to him, but who he was before that April night. Carl was born in 1959 in Valonia, Arkansas, delivered by Dr. Art Patterson in the same clinic where half the town was born. His father, Jimmy Hooten, worked at the sawmill on the edge of town. Hard work, dangerous work, but steady. His mother, Ruth, kept the books at Anderson's feed store on Main Street. They weren't rich. Nobody in Valonia was rich. But they had enough. Carl was their only child, and from the time he could walk, he followed his daddy everywhere. To the sawmill on Saturdays when Jimmy had to work overtime. To the garage where Jimmy kept his tools. To the lake where Jimmy taught him to fish. But what Carl really loved was engines. By the time he was 15 years old, Carl could rebuild a carburetor blindfolded. He'd torn apart his first lawnmower engine at 12, spread the parts across the garage floor and put it back together in working order. His mother had nearly fainted when she heard it roar to life. "That boy's got a gift," Jimmy told Ruth. "He can feel what's wrong with an engine just by listening to it." Carl's bedroom walls were covered with posters of muscle cars. Mustangs, Camaros, Chargers, all of them impossibly shiny and fast. He kept a notebook where he sketched engine designs, wrote down tips he learned from Hot Rod magazine, calculated horsepower and torque ratios. His dream was simple: own his own garage someday, be his own boss, fix cars for people who needed help. High school was something Carl tolerated rather than enjoyed. He made decent grades, mostly B's, a few C's in English and history, but he came alive in shop class. Mr. Henderson, the shop teacher, let Carl stay after school to work on projects. By his junior year, Carl had rebuilt his first complete engine, a 1967 Chevy small block V8 that he'd bought for $50 from a junkyard. It was at the homecoming game in October 1977, Carl's senior year, that everything changed. Lisa Marie Franklin stood in line at the concession stand, fumbling with the clasp on her purse. She was a junior, 17 years old, with dark hair that fell past her shoulders and brown eyes that crinkled when she smiled. Carl was behind her in line, wearing his varsity jacket even though he wasn't on any team. He'd borrowed it from his friend Danny just to impress the girls. Lisa's purse snapped open suddenly, spilling change all over the concrete, quarters and dimes rolling in every direction. "Oh no," she muttered, dropping to her knees to chase the coins. Carl knelt beside her, helping gather the scattered money. Their hands touched, reaching for the same quarter. "Got it," Carl said, grinning at her. "Thanks." Lisa took the coins, her cheeks flushing pink. "You know," Carl said, standing and offering his hand to help her up, "if you wanted me to buy your popcorn, you could have just asked. Didn't have to throw your money everywhere." Lisa laughed, a real laugh, surprised and genuine. "That's terrible." "I know. I'm working on my material." They stood in line together, talking. Carl bought her popcorn. They sat together for the rest of the game, even though neither of them paid any attention to the score. By the time the final whistle blew, Carl knew 3 things. Lisa loved strawberry ice cream. She wanted to be a teacher, and he was going to marry her. He told his mother that night when he got home. "Mama, I just met the woman I'm going to marry." Ruth smiled. "What's her name?" "Lisa Franklin. She's a junior. She's perfect." "Don't let your daddy hear you talking like that. You're 18 years old." "Don't matter, I know." And he did. They dated through Carl's senior year and Lisa's junior and senior years. Carl graduated in 1978, started working full-time at Morrison's Garage in Searcy. Lisa graduated in 1979. They got married that August in a courthouse ceremony with 20 people in attendance, family and close friends. The reception was at the VFW Hall with punch and sheet cake and a cousin's band playing country music too loud. Lisa wore a simple white dress she'd bought at JCPenney for $60. Carl wore a suit he'd borrowed from his father, the sleeves a little too short. They danced to Stand By Your Man, even though it made them both laugh because it was so obvious. "I will, you know," Lisa whispered in his ear as they swayed. "Stand by you." "I know," Carl said. "I'm counting on it." They couldn't afford a honeymoon. They moved into a small rental house on County Road 58, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with avocado green appliances from 1972. The carpet was orange shag, hideous, but it was theirs. Carl worked at Morrison's Garage during the day, saved every penny he could. Lisa got a job waitressing at the Denny's in Searcy. They ate a lot of hamburger helper and tuna casserole. They didn't have much, but they had each other. Tyler was born in January 1982. Lisa went into labor during an ice storm. Carl drove 15 miles to the hospital in Searcy with his hands gripping the wheel so tight his knuckles turned white, praying they'd make it in time. They did. Barely. When the nurse placed Tyler in Carl's arms for the first time, Carl cried. He wasn't ashamed of it. "Look at him, Lisa. Look what we made." Brandon came along in September 1985. Another boy. Carl didn't care that he didn't have a daughter. He loved his sons with a fierceness that surprised him. By 1986, Carl had saved enough for a down payment on a small lot off Highway 31. He built his garage himself, him and his father and a few friends working weekends and evenings. Hooten Auto Repair opened in January 1987. It wasn't much. 2 bays, a small office with a desk and a phone, an air compressor that wheezed when it ran. But it was his. Word spread fast in Valonia. Carl was honest. He didn't overcharge. He didn't invent problems that didn't exist. If he could fix something for $20 instead of $200, he did. Sometimes he forgot to send the bill. Lisa would find invoices weeks later still sitting on his desk, unpaid. "Carl, you can't run a business this way," she'd say, exasperated. "Mrs. Henderson's on a fixed income," Carl would say. "She can pay me when she can. And Jimmy Morrison? His boy's sick, medical bills. He'll pay me eventually." Lisa would shake her head, but she loved him for it. Carl coached Little League on Saturdays during the spring and summer. Tyler played shortstop. Carl wasn't a great coach. He didn't know all the technical terms, didn't have fancy strategies. But he made the kids laugh, taught them to shake hands after every game, win or lose. He played guitar badly, knew maybe 6 chords. But on Sunday evenings after church, he'd sit on the porch and play Country Roads or Sweet Home Alabama while the boys ran around the yard catching fireflies. Friday nights were catfish nights. Carl would take the boys to Searcy Lake, teach them how to bait a hook, how to be patient, how to appreciate the quiet. "Fishing ain't about catching fish," Carl told Tyler once. "It's about being still long enough to think." "Think about what?" Tyler asked. "Whatever needs thinking about." Carl's dream was growing. He wanted to expand the garage, add another bay, maybe hire someone to help. He wanted to save enough to send his boys to college if they wanted to go. He wanted to take Lisa on a real vacation, maybe to the Ozarks, rent a cabin, spend a week doing nothing but fishing and sleeping. He had plans. So many plans. On April 18, 1989, the day before he died, Carl closed his garage at 5:30 p.m. He stopped at the Piggly Wiggly, bought catfish filets for dinner. Got home by 6. The boys ran to greet him. Tyler with his spelling test, Brandon with a rock he'd found that he swore looked like a dinosaur. Dinner was perfect. Fried catfish, mashed potatoes, green beans. Sweet tea so sweet it made your teeth hurt. After dinner, after the dishes, Carl and Lisa sat on the porch swing. The cicadas sang. The heat hung in the air. "I'm blessed, darlin'," Carl said, "real blessed." Those were the last peaceful words he ever spoke. The next night, someone would take it all away. Detective Ray Holbrook had worked homicides before. Not many. White County wasn't exactly a hotbed of violent crime, but enough to know what a solvable case looked like. This wasn't one. 3 days after Carl Brian Hooten's body was found, Holbrook sat in his office at the White County Sheriff's Department, surrounded by evidence that led nowhere. Crime scene photos covered his desk, witness statements stacked in folders, a map of the area with Carl's route marked in red. And nothing. Absolutely nothing. "Talk to me, Carl," Holbrook muttered, staring at the photos. "Who did you stop for?" The obvious answer was robbery. Wallet gone, keys discarded, body left in the weeds like trash, but the obvious answer didn't fit. Carl had $47 in his front pocket when they found him. Scattered change in the grass. His wedding ring, 14-karat gold. Worth at least $100, still on his finger. His watch, a Timex, nothing fancy but sellable, still on his wrist. "What kind of robber takes the wallet but leaves the cash?" Holbrook asked his partner, Detective Mike Crawford. Crawford shrugged. "Panicked? Interrupted? By who? It's 11 o'clock at night on a country road. Nobody around for miles." They pulled Carl's bank records. No large withdrawals, no suspicious activity. Carl had $247 in his checking account, 1832s in savings. He paid his bills on time, no credit card debt. They checked his shop's books. Small business, barely profitable, but clean. No angry customers, no unpaid debts. They interviewed Randy Helms, owner of Randy's Pool Hall in Beebe. Randy was 63, balding, wearing suspenders and a shirt with pearl snaps. He'd owned the pool hall for 30 years. Knew every regular by name. Carl came in about 8:15, Randy said, sitting across from Holbrook in the interview room. Played a few games with Tommy Joe, Mike Patterson, Steve Collins, and Billy Turner. Left around 10:30. "How'd he seem?" Holbrook asked. "Normal, happy. He won $40 off Tommy Joe, bought a round of beers, said he had to get home. Lisa would have his hide if he was late." "Anybody give him trouble?" "Carl? No, sir. Everybody liked Carl. He was just good people, you know." "Anybody follow him out?" Randy thought for a moment. "Not that I saw. I was behind the bar, but the place was pretty empty by then, just the regulars." They interviewed Tommy Joe Patterson, Mike Patterson, Steve Collins, Billy Turner. Every man who'd been at Randy's that night. All of them said the same thing. Carl left alone, said goodbye, walked out to his truck, drove off. Nobody followed him. Nobody had beef with him. Nobody owed him money or vice versa. The robbery theory died within a week. Then the rumors started. An anonymous tip came through the sheriff's hotline. Carl Hooten owed money to someone in Little Rock. Gambling debts. That's why he got killed. Holbrook and Crawford drove to Little Rock, spent 3 days interviewing known bookies and loan sharks in the area. Showed Carl's photo around. Nobody recognized him. "You're wasting your time," one bookie told them, a man named Ricky DeLuca who operated out of a bar on Asilm Street. "I know every degenerate gambler from here to Memphis. Never seen this guy." They checked Carl's phone records. No calls to Little Rock. No suspicious numbers. They asked Randy Helms again. "Did Carl gamble?" Randy laughed. "Carl? He didn't even bet on the Super Bowl. He'd play pool for $20, maybe $40, but that was it. He wasn't a gambler." The bookie theory died. In June, another anonymous tip. "Check out Dwayne Patterson. His wife, Jenny, was real friendly with Carl, maybe too friendly. Dwayne Patterson, 34 years old. Worked at the Tyson poultry plant in Beebe, known for a hot temper. 3-bar fights on his record, all dismissed or settled. Holbrook and Crawford brought him in. Dwayne was a big man, 6'2", 220 pounds, arms like tree trunks. He sat in the interview room with his arms crossed, jaw set. "I didn't kill Carl Hooten," he said before they even asked. "Where were you the night of April 19th? Holbrook asked. "Working. Night shift at Tyson. Clocked in at 10 p.m., clocked out at 6 a.m. Check my time card." They did. Dwayne's alibi was solid. Security footage showed him entering the plant at 9:52 p.m., not leaving until 6:07 a.m. "What about your wife and Carl?" Crawford asked. Dwayne's face darkened. "What about them? Were they having an affair?" "Hell no, Jenny talked to Carl when she brought her car in for an oil change. That's it. Carl was nice to everybody. That's just who he was." They interviewed Jenny Patterson separately. She was 29, thin, nervous, twisting a tissue in her hands. "Carl fixed my car a few times," she said. "He was always polite, made small talk, that's all. I barely knew him." "Your husband ever seemed jealous?" Jenny looked shocked. "Of Carl? No. Dwayne knew I wasn't. I loved my husband. Carl was just nice. That's all." The jealous husband theory died. By late summer, the investigation was grasping at straws. A deputy suggested, what if Carl was running moonshine? This area's got a history. Maybe he crossed the wrong people. They searched Carl's property, the garage, the house, his truck, or what was left of it after the fire. Nothing. They interviewed known moonshiners in White County, showed Carl's photo. "Never seen him," said Curtis Ray Watkins, a man who'd been arrested twice for illegal distillation. "And if he was in the business, I'd know. Small community." The moonshine theory died. In September 1989, the investigation took a darker turn. 3 months earlier, in June, a man named David McClure had been murdered in Conway, 30 miles west. Shot behind the ear, wallet missing, body found off a county road. The similarities were impossible to ignore. The press ran with it. Serial killer stalking Central Arkansas? Panic spread. Gun sales spiked. Women stopped going out alone after dark. The FBI sent a profiler. Special Agent Patricia Moss, late 30s, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. She reviewed both cases, spent a week in Arkansas, interviewed witnesses, examined crime scenes. Her conclusion? The McClure case and the Hooten case are superficially similar, but I don't believe they're connected. "Why not?" Holbrook asked. "Different weapons. McClure was shot with a .22, Hooten with a .38. Different victimology. McClure was divorced, lived alone, had a history of bar fights. Hooten was married, stable, well-liked, and the Conway case has a suspect, McClure's ex-wife's boyfriend. They're building a case." 2 months later, the boyfriend confessed. Domestic dispute, nothing to do with Carl. The serial killer theory died. By 1991, the Carl Hooten case was ice cold. Detective Holbrook retired in 1993. He gave one final interview to the Searcy newspaper. "The Carl Hooten case haunts me. Good man, good family, and somebody got away with murder. I hope before I die, someone figures it out." The evidence boxes were sealed and stored in the White County Sheriff's Department evidence room, shelved between a 1987 burglary case and a 1990 drug bust. Lisa buried Carl in Green Meadows Cemetery off Highway 64. A simple headstone. Carl Brian Hooten, 1959-1989, beloved husband and father. She planted wildflowers on the grave every spring. She raised Tyler and Brandon on waitress wages and pure grit. Worked double shifts at Denny's. Helped with homework at midnight. Drove them to baseball practice and school dances and college orientations. Tyler graduated high school in 1999. Brandon in 2003. Both of them grew up without their father. Every year on Carl's birthday, Lisa took the boys and later the grown men they became to Searcy Lake. They'd fish, they'd remember. "Your daddy could fix anything," Lisa would say, "except this." For 32 years, Carl's case sat untouched. His killer walked free. Maybe they moved away, maybe they died. Maybe they lived in Valonia the whole time, saw Lisa at the grocery store, watched Carl's boys grow up and never said a word. Justice had failed Carl Brian Hooten. But in 2023, science would succeed where detectives couldn't. All because of a stain nobody saw coming. If you think cold cases should never be forgotten, that families deserve answers no matter how long it takes, hit that subscribe button. Only someone as heartless as Carl's killer would watch this story and not subscribe. January 2023, Little Rock, Arkansas. The Arkansas State Police formed a cold case unit with one mission: solve the unsolvable. Detective Sarah Chen was 38 years old, sharp as a tack, with a reputation for finding connections other investigators missed. Her partner, Detective Marcus Webb, was 45, a 20-year veteran who'd worked everything from drug trafficking to organized crime. They were given a room, 6 file cabinets full of forgotten cases, and a directive from the director: bring families closure. On March 15, 2023, Chen pulled a dusty box off the shelf. Case number 89040847. Victim, Carl Brian Hooten. "You ever hear about this one?" she asked Webb. Webb looked at the label. "Valonia, 89. Yeah, I remember. I was just a rookie then, working traffic. Every cop in the state was looking for that killer. Says here they never found him. Never even got close." Chen opened the box. Inside were faded manila folders, crime scene photographs gone yellow at the edges, evidence bags sealed with tape that had turned brittle with age. She pulled out the photos first. Carl's body in the weeds, the close-up of the gunshot wound, his truck burned to nothing. Then she read the witness statements, the forensic reports, the investigation notes in Detective Holbrook's cramped handwriting. "This guy was thorough," Chen said, flipping through pages. "He ran down every lead, interviewed everyone, got nowhere." "Some cases are like that," Webb said. "No evidence, no witnesses, no luck." "Maybe," Chen said. "Or maybe they just didn't have the right tools yet." She kept digging. At the bottom of the box, sealed in evidence bags, were Carl's clothes, his work shirt, his boots, his jeans, blood-stained, dirty, preserved for 34 years. Chen held up the evidence bag containing the jeans. "These were never DNA tested." "Probably not. 1989? DNA was barely a thing. Most departments didn't even know how to use it." Chen made a note. "Sent to lab for testing. April 2023. Othram Labs, The Woodlands, Texas." Othram Labs specialized in something called forensic genealogy, using DNA to build family trees, identify unknown victims, solve cold cases that traditional methods couldn't crack. The Arkansas Cold Case Unit sent them Carl Hooten's genes with a simple request: see if there's anything usable. Dr. Janet Reyes, lead forensic scientist, examined the genes under high-powered magnification. Blood, Carl's, dirt, denim fibers. And then, on the inside of the left thigh, something else. A stain, microscopic, barely visible even under magnification. Semen. "Well, that's unexpected," Dr. Reyes murmured. She ran the DNA profile. Not Carl's. Male. Unknown. "The killer," Dr. Reyes said to her assistant. "He got excited, aroused, maybe during the act, maybe after. He adjusted himself, left this behind. It was disgusting. It was also the break the case needed. Forensic genealogy works like this. Take the DNA profile, upload it to genealogy databases like GED Match and Family Tree DNA, find relatives who've done ancestry tests, build a family tree backwards until you find the person who matches. It's how they caught the Golden State Killer. How they identified Jane Doe's who'd been nameless for decades. How they were about to identify Carl Hooten's murderer. Dr. Reyes uploaded the profile to GEDmatch on May 3, 2023. Within 48 hours, she had a hit. A second cousin in Tulsa, Oklahoma. A man named Gerald Hooten who'd submitted his DNA to learn about his ancestry, never imagining it would help solve a murder. Then another hit. A third cousin in Springfield, Missouri. Margaret Crawford, maiden name Hooten. Both matches shared DNA with the unknown male from Carl's genes. Both were members of the Hooten family. Dr. Reyes called Detective Chen on May 8th. "I've got something," she said. "Your killer is related to the victim." Chen felt her stomach drop. Related? How? Can't say exactly yet. Could be a cousin, could be closer, but they share a common ancestor in the Hooten family line. I'm building the tree now. May 15, 2023. Arkansas Cold Case Unit Office. Chen and Webb spread genealogy charts across their conference table. Dr. Reyes had sent them a preliminary family tree going back 4 generations. At the top, Samuel Hooten, born 1890, died 1965. He had 3 children. One of them was James Jimmy Hooten, Carl's father. "Okay," Chen said, tracing the lines with her finger. "Jimmy Hooten married Ruth McAllister in 1958, had 1 son, Carl. But look here," Webb said, pointing to another branch. Jimmy Hooten had a relationship before he married Ruth, with a woman named Barbara Nell Crawford. Chen leaned closer. Barbara gave birth to a son in 1954, 5 years before Jimmy married Ruth. What was the son's name? Chen read the birth certificate copy Dr. Reyes had found. Harlan Hooten. Father listed as James Hooten. Webb sat back. Jimmy Hooten had another son, before Carl. Carl had a half-brother he never knew about. They stared at each other. "Pull everything you can find on Harlan Hooten," Chen said. It took 3 days to piece together Harlan's life, and what they found was ugly. Harlan Eugene Hooten, born February 12, 1954, in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. Mother, Barbara Nell Crawford, unmarried, worked at a textile mill. Father, James Jimmy Hooten, who never married Barbara, paid child support quietly for 18 years, then disappeared from Harlan's life when the boy turned 18. Harlan, who went by Hank, grew up poor. Criminal record started young, shoplifting at age 13, assault at 16, drug possession at 19. By the time Hank was 25, he was a full-blown methamphetamine addict, in and out of Cummins Unit and Tucker Unit prisons. Burglary. Possession with intent to distribute. Assault with a deadly weapon. He was released from Cummins Unit on March 8, 1989. 6 weeks before Carl Brian Hooten was murdered. Chen pulled Hank's parole records, required to check in weekly with his parole officer in Pine Bluff. But in March and April of 1989, he'd listed his residence as Beebe, Arkansas. Beebe, 12 miles from Valonia. He was in the area, Webb said. Right place, right time. But why kill Carl? Did they even know each other? That was the question. If Carl never knew he had a half-brother, how did Hank know about Carl? Chen dug deeper into the records. Found something interesting in Jimmy Hooten's estate papers from 1975 when he died. Jimmy had left everything to his wife Ruth and his son Carl. Nothing to Hank. Not a single mention. Half the inheritance, Webb said. That's motive. Hank felt cheated. But would that be enough to kill over? If you're desperate, strung out, and angry, yeah, that'd be enough. They needed proof. DNA placed Hank at the scene, or at least proved his DNA was on Carl's clothes. But they needed more. They needed witnesses. They needed someone who could connect Hank to Carl. Chen started calling residents of Valonia who'd been there in 1989. asking about strangers in town, anyone unusual hanging around Carl's shop in the weeks before he died. Most people didn't remember. 34 years was a long time, but Randy Helms, now 81, still living in Beebe, still owned the pool hall, remembered something. Chen and Webb drove to Randy's pool hall on June 5, 2023. The place looked exactly the same as it had in the crime scene photos from '89. Same neon beer signs, same scarred pool tables, same smell of stale cigarettes and spilled beer. Randy sat in his usual spot behind the bar, reading the newspaper. "Mr. Helms," Chen said. "I'm Detective Chen. This is Detective Webb. We're with the Arkansas State Police Cold Case Unit. We'd like to talk to you about Carl Hooten." Randy looked up, his eyes sharp despite his age. "Carl, I think about him all the time. You got something new?" "Maybe. Do you remember anyone unusual coming around looking for Carl in the weeks before he died?" Randy thought for a long moment. Then his eyes widened. "Wait. Yeah, there was a guy. Came to Carl's shop maybe 3-4 weeks before Carl got killed." Chen pulled out her notebook. "Can you describe him?" "Rough-looking, needed a shave, skinny, that tweaker skinny, you know, twitchy, nervous energy." "Did you see him talk to Carl?" "I was at the shop dropping off Carl's lunch. My wife used to make extra sandwiches. I'd bring Carl one sometimes. This guy pulled up in a beat-to-hell Buick, rust everywhere. Carl stepped outside. They talked for maybe 15 minutes. Could you hear what they said?" "Not much. But I heard voices raised. Not yelling, but intense." Carl looked upset when he came back in. "Did Carl tell you who the guy was?" "He said something like, 'Family trouble, nothing I can fix.'" Chen felt her pulse quicken. "Did the man come back?" "Not that I know of, but Carl seemed off after that. Distracted." Chen showed Randy a photo, a mugshot of Hank Hooten from 1988. Randy studied it. "Could be. Hard to say for sure. This was 34 years ago, but the general look? Yeah. That could be him." Back in the car, Webb turned to Chen. "Family trouble. Carl knew. Carl met his half-brother," Chen said, "and 3 weeks later he was dead. We need to find out what Hank wanted." The answer came from the one person who would know. Lisa Hooten, August 10th, 2023. Cabot, Arkansas. Lisa Hooten, now Lisa Patterson after remarrying in 2022, lived in a modest ranch house with a well-tended garden and a porch swing that reminded Chen painfully of the one in the crime scene photos from 1989. Lisa answered the door wearing jeans and a University of Arkansas t-shirt. She was 64 now, her dark hair gone gray, lines around her eyes that spoke of decades of grief. But she was still beautiful in that weathered, resilient way. "Mrs. Patterson," Chen said. "I'm Detective Sarah Chen. This is Detective Marcus Webb. We're from the Arkansas State Police Cold Case Unit. We're investigating your first husband's murder." Lisa's hand went to her throat. "Carl? After all these years?" "Yes, ma'am. We have some new information. May we come in?" Lisa led them to the living room. Family photos covered the walls. Tyler and Brandon as boys, then as young men, then with wives and children of their own. And in the center, a wedding photo from 1979. Carl and Lisa, young and smiling and full of hope. Lisa sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap. "What did you find?" Chen chose her words carefully. "We found DNA evidence that we were able to trace using genealogy. The person who killed Carl was related to him." Lisa's face went pale. "Related? How?" "Carl's father, Jimmy, had another son before he married Carl's mother, a son named Harlan Hooten." "Did Carl ever mention him?" Lisa was silent for a long moment. Then slowly she nodded. "He mentioned him once," she said quietly. "About 3 weeks before he died. Carl came home late from the shop one night. I could tell something was bothering him. He was quiet at dinner, barely ate. Do you remember what he said? Lisa closed her eyes, remembering. After the boys went to bed, I asked him what was wrong. He said, I got a half-brother I never knew about. He showed up at the shop today. Chen leaned forward. What else did he say? I was shocked, you know. Carl's daddy died when Carl was 16. Carl thought he was an only child. I asked him how he knew this man was really his brother. Carl said, he looks like pictures of my daddy when he was young. And he knew things. About my grandparents, about Pine Bluff, about my daddy's first girlfriend. It's him. Did Carl say what this man wanted? Lisa's voice dropped to almost a whisper. Money. $10,000. He said he needed it to get clean, go to rehab. Said he'd been in and out of prison, strung out on meth. Said their daddy owed him half of everything Jimmy left behind. What did Carl tell him? Carl said no. Lisa's eyes filled with tears. He told me, Lisa, I don't have that kind of money. We got 2 boys, a mortgage, the shop barely breaks even. I can't give him $10,000 I don't have. How did the brother react? Carl said he got angry, started talking about how Jimmy abandoned him, chose Carl's mama over his, left him with nothing. Carl tried to calm him down, offered to help him find a treatment program, maybe lend him a few hundred, but the man said no. Said Carl owed him, said family was supposed to take care of family. Did Carl mention this man's name? Harlan. He called him Harlan. Said everyone called him Hank. Chen and Webb exchanged looks. Mrs. Patterson, Webb said gently. Did Carl seem afraid of this man? Lisa shook her head. Not afraid, just sad. Carl felt bad for him, I think. Felt guilty that his daddy left this man behind, but Carl couldn't give him what he wanted. Did Carl ever see Hank again after that? Not that he told me, but Carl got quiet after that, withdrawn. I asked him a few times if everything was okay, and he'd say yes, but I could tell it was weighing on him. 3 weeks after that conversation, Carl was dead. Chen pulled out a photo of Hank from 1989, a parole photo taken just after his release from Cummins' unit. Is this the man? She asked. Lisa studied the photo. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I never met him, she said. Carl never brought him around. But Carl showed me a photo once, said this was his half-brother. It was this man. Mrs. Patterson, Chen said carefully. We believe Hank Hooten killed your husband. The DNA we found at the scene matches him. We have a witness who saw him at Carl's shop. And we have evidence that Carl refused to give him money. We think Hank killed Carl out of anger, a perceived betrayal. Lisa covered her face with her hands and sobbed. Webb handed her a tissue box. After a few minutes, Lisa composed herself. Where is he? This Hank? Where is the man who killed my husband? Chen took a breath. He died in 2015, drug overdose. Lisa's face hardened. The grief turned to something else. Rage. So there's no trial, she said flatly. No justice. No legal justice, Chen said. But your family deserves to know the truth, and we want to make sure the case is officially closed with the correct findings. My boys, Lisa said. Tyler and Brandon. They need to know. Would you like us to tell them, or would you prefer to? Lisa wiped her eyes. Can you tell them? With me there? Of course. 3 days later, Tyler Hooten and Brandon Hooten sat in their mother's living room with detectives Chen and Webb. Tyler was 41 now, owned an auto repair shop in Conway, following in his father's footsteps. He had his father's build, his father's hands. Brandon was 38, taught high school shop class in Searcy. He had his father's smile. Neither of them had ever met their father's killer. Neither had known he existed. Chen walked them through the evidence, the DNA, the family tree, the meeting at Carl's shop, the money, the motive. Tyler stood up and punched the wall. His hand went through the drywall. He didn't seem to notice. 24 years, he said, voice shaking. I was 7 years old when my dad died. Brandon was 4. We grew up without him because this piece of trash killed him over $10,000. Brandon sat with his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. Lisa moved to comfort her sons, but Tyler was pacing now, furious. Where is he? Tyler demanded. Where is this Hank Hooten? He died in 2015, Webb said. Fentanyl overdose. Good, Tyler spat. I hope he suffered. Brandon looked up, his face red and tear-streaked. Did he ever say anything? Confess? Show any remorse? We're still investigating, Chen said. We're tracking down people who knew him, who were incarcerated with him. If he said anything to anyone, we'll find it. I want to know everything, Tyler said. Every detail. I don't care how ugly it is. You'll have it, Chen promised. After the detectives left, Lisa sat with her sons in silence. Finally, Brandon spoke. Dad died trying to help family, even family who didn't deserve it. That was your father, Lisa said quietly. He couldn't turn away from someone who needed help, even when he should have. Tyler's voice was cold. Where's Hank buried? Lisa looked at him. She saw the rage in his eyes and recognized it. She felt it too. Jefferson County Cemetery, she said. Paupers section. Tyler and Brandon looked at each other. I want to see it, Tyler said. Lisa nodded slowly. So do I. If you believe Carl's family deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful. Comment justice for Carl if you think cold cases matter. Only someone as selfish as Hank Hooten would scroll past without engaging. September 2023. Detective Chen sat at her desk staring at Hank Hooten's prison records. The man had spent more of his adult life behind bars than free. Cummins Unit, Tucker Unit, back and forth like a revolving door. Drugs, theft, assault, parole violation, more drugs. Inmates talk, Chen said to Webb, who was reading over her shoulder. They brag. They confess, especially lifers who've got nothing to lose. You want to track down his cellmates? Every single one. They requested records from the Arkansas Department of Corrections. Hank had been incarcerated with dozens of men over the years. Most were still inside. Some had been released. A few had died. Chen started making calls. Most of the former inmates didn't remember Hank or claimed they didn't. A few remembered him as crazy, twitchy, always high even inside. But one name caught Chen's attention. Jerome J.J. Washington, cellmate to Hank Hooten from 2008 to 2010 at Tucker Unit, convicted of drug trafficking, released in 2019. Current address, Texarkana, Arkansas, Chen called. J.J. answered on the third ring. Mr. Washington? This is Detective Sarah Chen with the Arkansas State Police. I'm investigating a cold case murder, and I understand you were cellmates with Harlan Hooten at Tucker Unit. Silence on the other end. Mr. Washington? Yeah, I'm here. JJ's voice was cautious. I remember Hank. What about him? I'd like to talk to you in person. Would tomorrow work? Another pause. What's this about? A murder from 1989. I believe Hank may have been involved. He's dead, you know. I know, but his victim's family deserves answers. JJ sighed. Yeah, all right. I'll talk to you. I'm clean now, been clean 4 years, got a job, got my life straight. I don't want no trouble. No trouble, just conversation. September 18th, 2023. Texarkana, Arkansas. Chen and Webb drove 6 hours to Texarkana, a city split down the middle by the Arkansas-Texas state line. JJ lived in a small apartment complex on the Arkansas side, 3rd floor, paint peeling from the building's exterior. J.J. Washington answered the door wearing work boots and a construction company t-shirt. He was 58, lean and muscular from physical labor, with gray in his beard and eyes that had seen too much. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. The apartment was clean but sparse. A couch, a TV, a small kitchen table. Photos on the wall of J.J. with what looked like his children and grandchildren. They sat at the kitchen table. Chen pulled out her notebook. "Mr. Washington, thank you for meeting with us. I know this might be uncomfortable." J.J. shrugged. "I did my time, paid my debt. I got nothing to hide now. Tell us about Hank Hooten." J.J. leaned back in his chair. "Hank? Man, that dude was crazy. We bunked together for 2 years at Tucker. He was always tweaking, always paranoid. Even inside, he found ways to get high, traded favors, smuggled stuff in from corrupt guards. He was a mess." "Did he talk about his family?" J.J. laughed, a cold, bitter laugh. "Oh yeah, Hank talked about family all the time, especially his brother." Chen's pulse quickened. "What did he say about his brother?" "Said he had a little brother who had everything. Nice house, pretty wife, good job, 2 kids. Said the brother was living the American dream while Hank was rotting in prison." "Did Hank say his brother's name?" "Carl. Yeah, he called him Carl. Said Carl owed him big time, half their old man's inheritance that Hank never got." Webb leaned forward. "Did Hank ever say what he did about it?" J.J.'s eyes darkened. He looked down at his hands. "This is about Carl getting killed, isn't it?" "Yes." J.J. was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly, as if making a decision. "Hank bragged about it," J.J. said quietly. "Every damn day for 2 years he bragged about killing his brother." Chen felt her breath catch. "Tell us exactly what he said." J.J.'s story. "It was maybe 6 months into our time together. Hank was high. Someone had smuggled in some meth and Hank got hold of it. He was talking fast, paranoid, pacing the cell. I asked him why he was so angry all the time. Most guys inside, they either get quiet or they get violent. Hank was different. He was bitter, like the world owed him something. He said, 'My whole life, my brother got everything. Our daddy left him everything, left me nothing, like I didn't even exist.' I said something like, 'That sucks, man.' And Hank laughed. He said, 'I made it right, though. I paid him back.' I didn't think nothing of it at first, just tweaker talk. But Hank kept going. He said, 'I showed up at his shop, told him who I was, told him I needed help, $10,000, that's all. $10,000 to get my life together.' I asked what his brother said. Hank's face got dark. He said no. Said he didn't have it. But I saw that shop. I saw his nice truck. I saw the ring on his finger. He had money. He just didn't want to give it to me. I could see where this was going. I said, 'So what did you do?' Hank smiled, this awful, proud smile. He said, 'I waited 3 weeks, let him think I'd gone away. Then one night I followed him. He was coming home from some bar driving that nice Chevy truck. Hank said he drove ahead of Carl, pulled off on a dark county road, popped his hood like his car broke down. When Carl came along, Hank flagged him down. 'Family helps family,' Hank said. 'That's what I told him, and my stupid brother, he pulled over.' Hank said Carl got out, walked over to look at the engine, bent over the hood. Never saw it coming. Hank said, 'I shot him behind the ear while he was bent over, 1 shot. Easiest thing I ever done. He dropped like a sack of potatoes.' I asked if he felt bad about it. Hank looked at me like I was stupid. He said, 'Feel bad?' He got what he deserved for turning his back on blood. You don't turn your back on family." Chen's hands were shaking as she wrote. "Did Hank say what he did after?" J.J. nodded. Said he took Carl's wallet to make it look like robbery, tossed the keys, drove Carl's truck to some logging road and burned it, threw the gun in the White River. A .38. Yeah, .38 special. He was specific about that. Why didn't you come forward? Webb asked. JJ's face hardened. You ever been inside? You know what happens to snitches? Hank was connected to the Aryan Brotherhood. Not a full member, but he did favors for them. If I'd said anything, I'd be dead before the guards could move me to protective custody. And after you were released? By then I'd been out 5 years, started a new life. I didn't want to drag myself back into that world. I figured Hank would die inside anyway. He was using heavy, deteriorating fast. JJ looked at Chen. I'm not proud I stayed quiet. But I had grandkids by then. I wanted to live to see them grow up. Chen understood, even if she didn't like it. Fear was a powerful motivator. Would you be willing to give a sworn statement? Chen asked. For the family's sake? They need closure. JJ thought about it, then nodded. Yeah, if it helps that family, I'll do it. Hank's dead now anyway. Can't hurt me anymore. Chen and Webb spent 2 more hours with JJ getting every detail down in writing. Then JJ signed a sworn affidavit, notarized by a local notary public they'd called to the apartment. As they were leaving, JJ stopped them at the door. That brother, Carl, did he have kids? 2 sons, Chen said. 7 and 4 when their father was killed. JJ closed his eyes. Damn, Hank never mentioned that part. Or maybe he did and I forgot. He shook his head. I'm sorry, for what it's worth. You telling the truth now, that's worth something, Chen said. On the drive back to Little Rock, Webb spoke what they were both thinking. We've got DNA. We've got the meeting at Carl's shop. We've got Lisa's testimony about the money. And now we've got a confession, even if it's secondhand. It's enough, Chen said, more than enough. We know exactly what happened. But Hank's dead. We can't arrest a corpse. No. But we can close the case. We can give the family the full truth. We can make sure Carl's story is told correctly. Webb nodded. They deserve that much. October 15th, 2023, Cabot, Arkansas. Chen and Webb returned to Lisa Patterson's home on a gray Sunday afternoon. The trees were starting to turn, leaves fading to yellow and orange. Lisa answered the door with her husband David beside her. Tyler and Brandon were already there, sitting in the living room, their faces tense with anticipation. You found something, Lisa said. It wasn't a question. We did, Chen said. May we sit down? They gathered in the living room. 4 family members sitting on one couch, 2 detectives sitting across from them. The air felt heavy. Chen took a breath. We tracked down a man who was cellmates with Hank Hooten from 2008 to 2010. His name is Jerome Washington. He gave us a sworn statement about conversations he had with Hank. What did Hank say? Tyler asked, his voice tight. Hank confessed to Jerome multiple times. He told him exactly how he killed Carl. Lisa's hand found David's and gripped it tight. Chen walked them through it. Every detail from JJ's statement. The flag down. The fake car trouble. Carl pulling over because family helps family. The shot behind the ear while Carl was bent over the engine. Brandon stood up halfway through, walked to the window, stood with his back to them. His shoulders were shaking. Tyler sat perfectly still, his jaw clenched so tight Chen could see the muscle jumping. When Chen finished, the silence in the room was suffocating. Finally, Lisa spoke. Her voice was eerily calm. So he planned it. It wasn't heat of the moment. He waited 3 weeks, thought about it, planned it, and executed my husband like an animal. Yes, ma'am. And he never felt bad about it. According to Jerome Washington, no. Hank believed Carl deserved it for refusing to help him. Tyler turned from the window. His eyes were red, but his voice was steady. Where is Hank buried? Chen had anticipated this question. Jefferson County Cemetery, Paupers Section, plot number 847. He was buried in June 2015 after he died of a drug overdose. No family claimed the body. Good, Tyler said coldly. He died alone, like he deserved. Brandon spoke without turning from the window. Dad stopped to help him. Even after Hank asked for money he didn't have. Even after Hank got angry. Dad still stopped when he saw Hank on the side of the road because that's who Dad was. He helped people. That's right, Lisa said softly. That's exactly who your father was. And Hank killed him for it, Tyler said. Killed him for being a good man. Chen watched the family process the information. This was always the hardest part, giving people answers they needed but didn't want. Mrs. Patterson, Webb said gently, we're going to officially close the case. The Arkansas State Police will issue a statement that Carl Brian Hooten was murdered by his half-brother Harlan Hooten in April 1989. The suspect is deceased. Justice in the legal sense won't be possible, but the truth will be on record. That's something, David Patterson said, speaking for the first time. He squeezed Lisa's hand. At least you know now. No more wondering. Lisa nodded, but tears were streaming down her face. 34 years. I've spent 34 years wondering if it was random. If Carl was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. If some stranger saw him and decided to kill him for no reason. And now you know it wasn't random, Chen said. It was someone Carl tried to help. Someone who should have protected him. Someone who was blood, Tyler said bitterly. That's supposed to mean something. It did to your father, Lisa said. It meant everything to Carl. That's why he stopped. After the detectives left, Lisa sat with her sons and her husband in the quiet living room. The autumn light was fading outside. Shadows lengthened across the floor. What do we do now? Brandon asked. We decide how to remember him, Lisa said. Your father was murdered by someone he tried to help, but that doesn't change who Carl was. It doesn't make his kindness a weakness. It makes Hank's evil more obvious. I want to see where Hank is buried, Tyler said. Lisa looked at him. She saw the rage in his eyes and understood it perfectly. She felt it too. A cold, hard anger that had been growing since Chen told them the truth. Why? David asked carefully. Because I need to, Tyler said. I need to see it. I need to know he's really gone. Brandon turned from the window. I want to go too. Lisa stood. She walked to the mantel, picked up the photo of Carl from their wedding day. He was smiling in the picture, young and happy and alive. We'll go, she said. All of us. And then we'll decide what to do. Do about what? David asked. Lisa's voice was steel. About making sure Hank Hooten gets exactly what he deserves. If you're standing with Lisa and her boys, if you believe some people don't deserve to rest in peace, comment Carl deserved better. Hit subscribe if you think families have the right to their own kind of justice. Only someone as twisted as Hank Hooten would watch this story and not engage. November 2023, Jefferson County Cemetery, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. The Paupers section of Jefferson County Cemetery looked exactly like what it was. A place for forgotten people. No manicured lawns, no elaborate headstones. Just rows of small metal markers flush with the ground, many of them rusted and illegible. Weeds grew tall between the graves. Nobody left flowers here. Lisa stood with Tyler and Brandon in the cold November drizzle, staring down at marker number 847. Harlan E. Hooten, 1954 to 2015. That was it. No beloved son. No rest in peace. Just a name and dates. This is him, Tyler said flatly. The man who killed our father. Brandon crouched down, touched the metal marker with his fingertips. He's been here 8 years. Since 2015, Dad's been gone 34. Lisa stood perfectly still, her face unreadable. She'd been quiet the entire drive from Cabot to Pine Bluff, sitting in the passenger seat of Tyler's truck while her sons drove. "What are you thinking, Mom?" Tyler asked. Lisa looked at her boys. At 41 and 38, they were men now. Strong men, good men, men their father would be proud of. But they'd grown up without him, without his guidance, his laughter, his presence at their baseball games and graduations and weddings. Because of the man buried beneath her feet. "I'm thinking he doesn't deserve to be in Arkansas soil," Lisa said quietly. "This is our home, Carl's home. Hank has no right to it." "What do you want to do?" Brandon asked. Lisa had been thinking about this for weeks. Since the day Detective Chen told them the truth. Since the day she learned that Carl died trying to help the brother who would murder him. "I want him gone," Lisa said. "I want him removed from this place. I want him erased." Tyler looked at Brandon. Brandon looked at Tyler. Some wordless communication passed between them. "How do we do that?" Tyler asked. Lisa had already researched it. Paupers' graves were often reused after 10 years. The counties needed the space, but families could claim bodies, could have them exhumed, could relocate them or dispose of them. "We get permission to exhume him," Lisa said. "We have him cremated, and then we scatter his ashes somewhere he'll never rest." "Where?" Brandon asked. Lisa smiled, a cold, hard smile that held no warmth. "The White River, where he threw the gun that killed your father. Let the water take him. Let him drift away and disappear like he deserves." December 2023 through June 2024. The process took months. Paperwork, permits, county approvals, death certificates, proof of relationship. Ironically, the same DNA evidence that proved Hank killed Carl also proved he was Carl's half-brother, which made Lisa and her sons next of kin. The cost was 1/200. They split it 3 ways, $400 each. In June 2024, Jefferson County approved the exhumation. A crew dug up grave 847 on a hot Thursday morning. The casket, cheap pine degraded by moisture and time, fell apart when they lifted it. Hank's remains were barely recognizable. Bones and bits of fabric, nothing more. They transferred everything to a cremation facility in Pine Bluff. 2 days later, Lisa received a phone call. "Your remains are ready for pickup, Mrs. Patterson." Lisa drove to Pine Bluff alone. The crematorium handed her a cardboard box containing a plastic bag of ashes. "I'm sorry for your loss," the attendant said automatically. Lisa didn't correct her, didn't say she wasn't sorry at all. She drove home with the ashes in a Folgers coffee can she'd brought from home. Seemed fitting. Hank didn't deserve anything better. July 4th, 2024, midnight, Independence Day. The irony wasn't lost on Lisa. She met Tyler and Brandon at the old boat launch near Searcy, where the White River curved through White County. The same stretch of river where they used to fish with Carl. The same water where Hank had thrown the gun after murdering his brother. It was a clear night. Stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. The river moved slow and dark, reflecting moonlight. No one else was around, just the 3 of them, Lisa, Tyler, and Brandon, and a coffee can full of ashes. They walked to the river's edge. The ground was soft beneath their feet, damp from recent rain. Brandon carried the can. His hands were shaking. "You don't have to do this, Mom," Tyler said quietly. "We can turn around. Let the county deal with it." Lisa shook her head. "No. I need to do this. We need to do this for your father." They stood at the water's edge for a long moment, listening to the river, listening to the crickets and frogs and nightbirds, listening to the silence their father should have been part of. Brandon held out the can to Lisa. You should be the one. Lisa took it. The metal was cool in her hands. Light. Surprisingly light for what was left of a human being. She opened the lid, looked inside at the gray-white ash and bone fragments. This was all that remained of Harlan Eugene Hooton, the man who murdered her husband, the man who stole her children's father, the man who destroyed their family for $10,000 and a grudge. Lisa walked to the very edge of the water. The river lapped at her shoes. Tyler and Brandon stood behind her, silent witnesses. "This is for Carl," Lisa said, her voice steady and clear in the darkness. "The man you murdered, the father you stole from his children, the husband you took from his wife." She tipped the can. Ashes spilled out, gray against the black water. Some floated on the surface, some sank immediately. The current caught them, pulled them downstream, scattered them. "Rot where you belong, you son of a bitch," Lisa said. She poured until the can was empty, every last bit of ash and bone. Then she threw the can itself into the river and watched it float away. The three of them stood there for a long time, watching the water carry Hank Hooton away. Finally, Tyler spoke. "It's done." "Dad can rest now," Brandon said. Lisa wiped her eyes. She wasn't crying. Her eyes were just tired. "Your father's been resting for 34 years. Now we can rest." They walked back to Tyler's truck in silence, started the engine, drove away from the White River. Behind them, the current kept moving, carrying what was left of Hank Hooton toward the Mississippi, toward the Gulf, toward the ocean, carrying him away from Arkansas, away from Carl, away from everything. Gone. On the drive home, they were quiet for miles. Then Brandon spoke from the back seat. "Do you think Dad would be okay with what we did?" Lisa looked out the window at the dark countryside passing by. "Your father believed in mercy. He believed in second chances. He believed in helping people who needed it." "That's not an answer," Tyler said. "Your father also believed in justice," Lisa continued. "He believed some people burn through their second chances, and he believed in protecting family, real family, the people who stand by you." "You think he'd understand?" Brandon said. "I think," Lisa said carefully, "your father would understand that we did what we needed to do to move on, to let go, to finally close this chapter." Tyler's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't feel guilty." "Good," Lisa said. "Don't. Hank Hooton made his choices. He chose drugs. He chose violence. He chose to murder a man who tried to help him. He spent his whole life taking and destroying. He doesn't deserve our guilt. Or our mercy," Brandon added quietly. "Or our mercy," Lisa agreed. They drove the rest of the way home in silence. But it was a different kind of silence than before. Lighter. Freer. The weight they'd been carrying for 34 years, the weight of not knowing, of wondering, of imagining scenarios that never happened, was gone. They knew the truth now, and they dealt with it in the only way that made sense to them. If you believe Carl's family did the right thing, that sometimes justice means taking matters into your own hands when the law can't help, comment "Rest in peace, Carl." Hit subscribe if you think families deserve closure, no matter how they get it. Share this story if you believe cold cases matter, and that good people should be remembered while evil ones should be forgotten. Only someone as heartless as Hank Hooton would watch this entire story and not engage. Don't be like Hank. Stand with Carl's family. Subscribe, comment, share. Let's make sure Carl Brian Hooton is never forgotten. Carl Hooton was killed by a half-brother he barely knew, a stranger who shared his blood but nothing else. But what happens when the killer isn't a stranger at all? What happens when a man walks through his own home, the home he built, the family he raised, and methodically executes everyone who trusted him? His wife, his mother, his 3 children, ages 16, 15, and 13. Then arranges their bodies on sleeping bags, covers them with blankets, turns on classical music, and vanishes for 18 years. John List didn't kill out of rage, he killed out of calculation. He believed he was saving his family's souls, that poverty and shame were worse than death. He changed his name, remarried, taught Sunday school to other people's children while the FBI searched for him across the country. It took a forensic sculptor, a television broadcast, and a wife who looked at her husband one day and saw a wanted man. That story is next, the most methodical family annihilator in American history. A man so obsessed with perfection he destroyed everything rather than admit failure. Go watch it now. Because sometimes the most dangerous people don't look like monsters. They look like your neighbor,